Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lou Terminello, and welcome to the Hospitality Service Providers webinar at Green Spoon Water, and I thank you for all attending. So, I chair the National Hospitality and National Alcohol and Hospitality Group at Green Spoon Water. My background, very quickly and succinctly. So I've been in the alcohol business for about 40 years. I hate to admit it. On all tiers, I have been both a regulator. I have my own alcohol venues. And of course, I've been servicing the alcohol industry, the hospitality industry as an attorney, servicing all three tiers: retail, manufacturers, and wholesalers, for about almost 30 years now. We're presenting our little segment of the Green Spoons Innovation Summit to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 impact on hospitality service providers. And we have an excellent panel that's going to help us answer some questions and probe this issue. Our first panelist is Joe Delaney, who has been in the alcohol nightlife industry for many decades here in South Florida. I've known Joe for most of the time that he's been in the nightlife industry, and varying different ways. We've both represented Joe, and we partnered with Joe in a number of the nightlife venues. Joe currently owns and operates and is the managing partner of Martini Bar in Doral, Florida. And as I've mentioned, has extensive experience in the bar, lounge, nightlife industry. Our second panelist is Richard Millard with Trust Hospitality. He's the chairman and CEO of Trust. And Richard has extensive experience in the hotel side of the hospitality industry, both here in Florida and nationally. I know that Richard owns and operates and manages hotels throughout the country. And our third panelist is Hector Hurtado, who is part of the Vida and Estilo restaurant group. We have been proud to represent this restaurant group in a number of its venues over the decades. And Hector has extensive experience on the restaurant side. So what we have tried to do here with this panel is bring you some of the best minds and experienced minds in South Florida in both the nightlife, hotel, and restaurant spaces, to talk about how hospitality in general has been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that first came about in mid-March of this year. We all know, and you should be on your screen now, is some of the pertinent information that we're going to talk about. And as we go through this, those panelists who are representing these different industries, please feel free to kick in if you disagree with my numbers. But on the hotel side, I think it's fair to say that the hotel industry has been crippled by COVID-19. Our numbers indicate that at least 65% of the hotels around the country are operating by no more than, and probably less than, 40% capacity. Hotel capacity at that level is below the break-even threshold mark. And as a result, I think it's fair to say that the hotel industry has been crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic. On the restaurant side, again, crippled, devastated, it's all the same. The industry expects a loss of at least $250 billion by the end of 2020, where revenues were expected to exceed $850 billion. 2/3 of all restaurant employees have been either laid off or hours have been severely restricted, or they just can't make a decent living to support their families. Bars and nightclubs, as you may know, if you follow in South Florida, they have just recently been permitted to open in Miami-Dade County, but they have been shuttered tight for over 6 months, except for a short period of time in June, where they were allowed to reopen and then shuttered again. As a side note here, and Joe can speak to this extensively, that just because they are permitted to reopen in Miami-Dade County doesn't necessarily mean they're going to reopen. As you know, we also have a curfew here in South Florida that other parts of the state are not experiencing. And that curfew has a serious impact on the ability of bars and nightclubs to reopen. We don't take a position as to whether or not the curfew is something that is necessary. We also don't want to see the spread of COVID-19 any further. We need it to come to an end so that the hotel, restaurant, and bar lounge business can get back to where it needs to be. And we have, just because they're permitted to reopen doesn't necessarily mean they are. And I'm sure Joe will have something to talk about that later on. So with that, okay, I'd like to pose a few questions and invite any of our participants to use the tools of the webinar to forward any questions that they may have for our panelists as we go along. I understand that our restaurant panelist, Hector, is not yet online, is having some technical difficulties, but we'll start with Richard and Joe and wait for them. So my first question, all right, and I'd like to pose this first to Richard, if I may. Okay, Richard, if you can just talk to us about how the pandemic, beyond the short summary that I gave us, how the pandemic the economic impact has had on your business, Trust Hospitality in particular, and the hotel industry in general, and maybe give us some comparison as to how your projected 2020 revenues were against your actual current financial situation.
Thanks, Lou. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate being here. Actually, it's kind of interesting. This is my first public appearance working for somebody else. I actually merged my company with a company called Highgate last week, which is a much bigger operator than I am. That actually had nothing to do with the pandemic, but we'll talk about that later. So you can tell by my face, I've done this for a long time. I've been in the hotel business 55 years. And I usually say to people, well, I've seen this before. I'll tell you what happens and how we figure this out. This has happened before. This has not happened before. And I've been on a lot of panels, and I'm always interested to listen to everybody telling me how we're going to fix this, because I don't think it's that simple. I'm not sure there is too much to be gained at this point by crying and telling you how badly it's being impacted, because it's clear. It's clear how badly it has been impacted. And it's been impacted in such a way that there's no magic trick for any of us to do something better than the next guy, to do better than the next guy. Our industry, the hotel business, the restaurant business, the bar, nightclub business, we've all been affected in the same way, and it's a worldwide thing. It's not just about our neighborhood or us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we've been devastated. Yes, we closed most of our hotels. Yes, most of them aren't open again yet. According to all the statistics that I see, our revenues this year, just top line revenues, will be off something like 70 to 80% of what they were a year ago, maybe a little more. Some of it is market by market, truly, but in general, it's that way. There is no point in belaboring the point it happened. I don't think it's anybody's fault. We can't blame anybody. How we deal with it is a whole nother story that we can talk about. But yes, we've been, and it's obvious, it's in the press, it's everywhere you go. Most of our hotels have been closed, remain closed. We also have a number of hotels outside of the country, a lot, probably 40 or 50 hotels outside of the United States. The impact has been exactly the same. This is a worldwide problem. I don't know if anybody noticed today in Paris, they closed back the restaurants down again after opening them up. Not good news, fact of life. There's some good things that will come out of this we can talk about later, but yes, we've been devastated by it. I think we've learned some lessons. I think the only way to do is to look forward. Looking back, it is what it is, and we can all sit here, but we can't blame anybody for what happened. We couldn't have done anything differently. I'm not sure that most of us thought that in February of this year, we would have no income for the last half of that month, and then until the end of the year, there would be no income. I mean, zero. I don't think anybody planned for that. You know, the bad news continues to come out today about United Airlines and American Airlines and Disney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is what it is. I just think we got to look forward and figure out how we're going to do and what we're going to do and what we might do differently. But yes, we've been devastated. To tell you how bad that is and how many people have been laid off and let go is sad, but it's a fact of life, and there's not a thing we can do about it right now.
Richard, yeah. Unfortunately, that is it. Your attitude's refreshing that it is what it is. We just have to deal with it and get us back on the right track and put this thing behind us. And that's
I think that there is one thing about getting it back on the right track, but for all of us that are on the panel together, we are all in our industry, I think, a lot more together than we were before because we were all friendly adversaries. I think we all have the same issue right now. I don't think the issue is just mine or us or just Joe's or us. It's all of our, so I think with all of our minds together, we may come out of it better than we would being competitors.
Yeah.
So I think there's some good things came out of it.
I'd like to see what a hotel stay is going to look like after this pandemic is over.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's a different topic, but
yeah, it is, but it's a very simple topic. We'll talk about it.
Right. Joe, maybe you can tell us from nightlife view how the pandemic has affected us economically at Martini Bar, for example. And you've been shuttered since the middle of March, is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, St. Patrick's Day. Something terribly wrong about that.
Right. So tell us how this has affected you and Martini Bar in nightlife since the middle of March, since St. Patrick's Day.
You know, again, kind of to reiterate what I just heard, we are all in the same boat together. We're all shut down, out of control. But the real thing is this has never happened before. So after a whole lifetime of doing things a certain way, all those rules and things that we've learned have gone out the window. If I can give you an example, if I was opening a brand new nightclub, I'd spend a few months in that area doing my diligence, learning people, seeing what their needs and wants are. I'd obviously look at the demographics. All those demographics are no longer relevant. I can't do any of my market research because everybody else is closed. So, you know, I think what I'm hearing from some of my peers is, you know, as soon as the government lets us do it, we can get back to work. But I think that's a very simplistic view. For the last 6 months, people have been trained to stay at home and spend maybe $22 on a bottle of liquor that I would typically sell for $500 to $1,000. So the problem for us is, how do we even know how to ramp up for this? If everyone thinks, oh, we'll open the doors and it goes back to normal, that'd be crazy. What I'd like to do is do the same type of research, hiring, training that I would do for any new store that we've done day in, day out. This, you know, kind of formulas that we've always applied that have worked well for us. But all those formulas are useless right now. Who knows how people are going to react? Who knows how people have been staying home for 6 months are going to react to being allowed? It's just a question of being allowed. It's a question of how much has our client base changed since the beginning of all this. And unfortunately, I think it's changed considerably. So it's not like we're going to reopen and take up right where we left off. We're going to have to reopen. I mean, I can only talk from my experience. It takes me sometimes a year or two to break even. Clearly, we were past that point before. But if I thought I was going to open and take up right where I left off, I'd be out of my mind, because the whole world is different right now.
Yeah. And you've been shut tight since St. Patrick's Day through today.
St. Patrick's Day. I think we're in phase 597. I think nightclubs are at the bottom of the barrel as far as being allowed to open. You know, we're not a restaurant. We you know, do we sell food? Yes. Do we sell beer? Yes. But what we really sell is entertainment, atmosphere. So for me to open a night, I've got, you know, a few thousand in DJs indoor and out. I've got, you know, acts that I fly in from all over the world. And, you know, again, after 30 years of doing this in South Florida, I kind of know how to pull the trigger. We're not shy of it. Right now, I'm shyer than I've ever been in my whole life, because, you know, I just don't know what the ROI is going to be going forward. So, I mean, for us, we have to approach whatever's coming towards us with a completely open mind. We're going to have to learn to adapt really, really quick. And I mean, I'm not going to use the phrase hope for the best. Whatever happens is what's going to happen. It's out of our control. I mean, not just our industry, business in general. There's a lot of companies that are getting used to Zoom meetings has changed the way they do business forever, which affects the airlines.
We're going to get to the
hotels.
Joe, we're going to get to the operational changes in a minute. What I wanted to do is highlight the differences between a nightlife venue like you, who's been shut tight since March, and Hector, the restaurant industry, who's been topsy-turvy, inside out, 25%, 50%, indoors, outdoors. So, talk to me a little bit about how the pandemic has affected you and your industry. And the again, we're going to talk about operational changes separately, but talk to me about how the pandemic has affected the restaurant industry and where we are right now with that.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. Well, for the restaurants, it's gonna be it's a big hit. We know that COVID-19 has really affected the restaurant industry. And it was seen the fall in the restaurant income has occurred continually since March. Every day is a challenge for us because right now we are most of the restaurant that we have in our group is in Miami Beach, for example, and Miami Beach right now is not tourism. So we depend on the tourism to grow the business. And COVID-19 has given us a big challenge now. The challenge to create a new way to give service to our customers. But at this point, we are really affected in this area, in the restaurant area. I think that we are going to lose or give more or losing more sales. It's going to pass more months in order to return to the normality. But it's a great challenge, and every day is new. And I believe we are going to create more things in order to obtain more or not to close the restaurants. So I think, Lou, this is a big challenge for us right now.
Sure, of course. I'd like to move over to some operational issues. Richard, what do you see as some of the operational adjustments that hotel industry is going to need to make to ensure public safety and build consumer confidence when and as we come out of this and we start to reopen?
So let's just talk about what's going to happen, right? You have to suppose some things. We believe that the public will get back to doing things that we all did before the pandemic. We don't 100% agree that everybody's going to have Zoom meetings all the time. We know most people go to conventions not to listen to the speakers, but they go there to meet other people. So we think some of that is going to happen. We think people will go back and go to football games. We think people will go back and fly in airplanes again, and people will stay at hotels. So the question is, number one is, when will that happen, right? And it's not will it happen, it's when will that happen. Most of the people in my world say that we will start in the third quarter of next year, start to get back to doing business as usual, but the numbers will not be the same as 2019 until 2023 or 24. So obviously you've got to start to make your plans based on that, but let's still assume that people act the same way as they do now. It's a question of when. So from our standpoint, we have to reduce our costs at the hotels, not necessarily change the experience, but we have to reduce our costs, the hierarchy of how we run a hotel. We got to go back and look at that and go, hey, we don't need that kind of size of an executive team. What we pay people is going to change because the business can't support the kind of salaries that we're paying people. So that's going to change. The customer experience, we don't think will change that much. And we don't think any of us are going to invent this new way of making customers know how clean everything is. You know, we've all got plexiglass at our front desk. We've all got people walking around every time somebody leaves the table, like you do when you get on the airplane. There are some robots that we can buy that will sit in the lobby and blow out stuff that'll make it cleaner. But I'm not sure that we think that we're going to do a whole bunch of things that make the experience different. We're just going to have to operate differently and make the experience the same. So that means cutting costs in every way that we possibly can, and buying, and obviously the size of your organization makes a great difference to that when you have buying power. And that's one of the things, when things have been good, and one of the reasons I merged my company is all about scale. It's all about scale. How much scale do you have, and how much buying power do you have? We think that's it. We think it's different from the past. We don't think we can go out there and say we're different, we're cleaner than the guy down the street. I don't think that's going to work, and I don't think it's a good tactic. So our focus moving forward is much more about how we operate hotels. What do we do? How can we buy better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And understanding for at least the next 2 to 3 years, the volume is just not going to be there. It could be shorter, it could be quicker, but I think somehow we have to depend that all of us have a need. Human beings have a need, no matter what we've got used to sitting in our houses for the last 6 months. We want to go out. We want to interact with other people. We don't think that's going to change. Now, maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I don't think so. So our approach is much more from a cost standpoint than from an experiential standpoint, from a customer standpoint.
Gotcha. Joe, nightlife.
Yeah.
If you were to open up tomorrow, what kind of
Right.
operational changes could we expect to see in a pure nightclub venue?
I mean, some of the things we'll struggle with is what we sell. We have 70 gorgeous girls, which you can't see them if they're wearing face masks. Nightclubs are a place for people to meet. Well, if you're dancing with a face mask, that doesn't really work for us. The talent that we have to employ to give it the sizzle, the amazing DJs, the dancers, the percussionists. I mean, that's part of my fixed. So if my fixed stays the same and yet my sales are down the tubes, there's not a model that works for me with social distancing and full face masks. The question is, how much are you willing to lose a week? Because right now I'm losing less being closed than if I opened with social distancing, face masks. If I didn't have the numbers, I can't do the entertainment. You know, what's the point of having 70 beautiful girls if you can't see them? These are some of the struggles. So if I have to put it into kind of one phrase, rushing to open doesn't help me if it destroys my brand.
Great, understood. So it's going to look different when you first get open, as far as you're concerned. The experience.
Well, we're going to have to choose very carefully when we open.
Gotcha. Hector, restaurants are a little bit different. They've kind of been open as we've gone through this. Okay? Many of the hotels and all of the nightlife venues have been shuttered, as many of the hotels have. Restaurants have been opened, but in different varying degrees, outdoor, indoor, 25%, 50%. What can we expect as we come out of COVID-19 in the restaurant experience? What's going to be different about the restaurant experience than it was in February?
There's going to be a lot of difference, I think. The first thing is it's not the same customers that we have like before. It's a different kind of customers that there is trying to find more security. They're trying to find more another kind of experience. And the COVID changes a lot. Changes our mentality about the customer. In fact, the customer right now are asking for example, another kind of menu. We change our menu in most of the restaurants. We change our hours of operation. So many changes are in the restaurant right now.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that restaurants are closing earlier, that I have to have the ability on my cell phone to scan a bar in order to get the menu, that I need to go out and eat a little bit earlier, that the social distancing, I see empty tables, I've got to figure out which table I can sit at. It looks like a different experience, but as we come out of this, what else can we expect? Are we going to get a full menu again? Are we going to, what do you anticipate seeing down the road with restaurants?
No, I anticipate not a full menu right now. We don't know exactly what is the future is. We don't know if our authorities is going to cut the hours of operation one more time. So we are working in a new menu. We are working in a new shifts, and we are preparing for it is closings or we are working in another measures, and another measures in the restaurant. But we believe that is going to change. Something is going to change, and right now the authorities I don't see any change on the curfew. For example, we depend of the sales of that hours of operation. You know that in the morning and the day, most of the people go to the beach to take the sun, and we depend of the hours of operation in the night. So right now we have a curfew at 11 p.m. I see many many security in the streets, seeing that we close exactly to 11. So there is so many things that are happen right now that is more difficult for us to go ahead. It's an uncertain future, but we are preparing for that.
So
Hey,
we're
Lou.
getting some good questions from our attendees. If I can float some of these questions around, and this one applies to just about everybody on the panel, anybody who wants to jump in. How are these venues dealing with their rent issues and their landlord issues? Heck,
It's a big deal.
everybody seems to have
Oh my gosh, no, it's not easy. It's not easy.
not easy. That's a
Hey,
good
No,
answer.
it's not easy. Not easy.
So-
Well, why
Lou,
don't you
you're-
give us a little, I mean, we don't want to probe into your finances, but give us a little insight as to how you're dealing with your rent issues. That's a really good question. I know as a lawyer in the hospitality, when we're getting hit every day from clients about landlord and rent issues, but give us a little insight as to how that's working.
Hey, Lou,
Sure.
Richard. Hey, Lou, so when this first started, we're not just talking about rents, we're talking about debt as well at this point.
Debt service.
Yeah, when this first started, it was basically not too complicated to get some kind of relief from landlords and lenders and so forth. Most of that relief was 90 days, was 120 days, thereabouts, right? We got relief. We also all got a little PPP. And so we were kind of okay for the short term, right? It appears now that most everybody is out of cash. I'll use that word, right?
Right.
So the jury is now out. And there's been a lot of reductions in rent and for a period of time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think everybody's experience is the same. For a short time, everybody was trying to get along and be kind and so forth and so on. That is over now. Those gifts are kind of over. And again, if there was a finite end, that we could say that a date, I think things could be worked out. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think now we're going to see some financial massive tragedies, because not just on behalf of those of us that are paying mortgage and rent, but upon the guys that are the landlords that we're paying, who aren't paying their lender, who, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's two issues here. There's an issue that I'll call the short-term issue, which we don't know how long that is, right? The short-term issue is until I say we get back to normal. And then there's the issue after that. And the issue after that, nobody even can deal with right now. It used to be that, those of us that are the fittest will last the longest. Even the fittest. Disney World laid off how many people yesterday? I don't remember how many it was, but so the question's great. I don't know that there's an answer to it, but I think part of the answer, which I hate to say, has got to be the United States government. That's part of the answer here. There's got to be some things. You're a lawyer, I'm not. How do we put some of this stuff on the back end of the lease? How do we extend it? How do we save our landlord as well at the same time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And we have two issues. One issue is now, and now, is it for 6 months? Is it for a year and a half? Is it for 3 weeks? We don't know. And then what happens at the end of that? But I don't think there's any of us that can say to you, well, here's what has to happen, or here's what's going to happen. I think we're all in this boat.
Right. The 28,000 people were laid off at Disney.
That's one company.
One company, and
Right.
American Airlines.
Right.
I think some
Right.
other airlines.
So we need some, from a financial standpoint, there needs to be government help, and not necessarily writing a check, but some kind of legislation that will, to turn these things over to special services. That just adds more money.
I know in the beginning, our law firm was deep into restructuring leases and putting things on the end and deferring things and trying to get the pass-throughs paid so that landlords could pay their, but you're right, as time goes on, that just doesn't work anymore, and there needs to be a long-term solution. Hector, I don't know what you guys are doing with all of your restaurants, but I'm sure this is a continuing issue, and it's an issue that is probably you wake up to every morning and you're worrying about.
Yeah, well, not all of them. We have, like you said, just like 10 different landlords in the whole group. So not all of them is an agreement and agree with the situation. Some of them understand and give us time to repay or give us 2 months free. But yes, it's a big challenge too. They take a lot of conversation with them, and then we make an agreement, and they understand the difficult time that we are passing with this COVID-19.
It's not just your rent; it's all your debt. You have vendors.
It's all. It's the rent, the expenses, and the most important thing, Lou, I believe the most important thing that all of this is the employees. We lose.
Of course.
We lose when we close. We lose not 28,000, like to say, but we lose almost 700 employees with this pandemic. The restaurant in Las Vegas, the restaurant in Miami Beach, all of them closed. So this difficult to handle all the cost, all the employees, all the payroll in 1 month.
And this is a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
It's not just your restaurant in Miami Beach or your restaurant in Vegas. Europe is suffering from the same.
Whole world.
All
Yeah,
over
the whole world.
Who could have ever expected when we went to sleep in February that we were going to wake up to this in March? Joe, what are you guys doing for the rent at Martini Bar?
The biggest dilemma I have, I mean, I have a great landlord, but I can't even begin to enter into a good faith negotiation until there's a date. We don't know when this is going to end. How can I ask a landlord to say, can you forgive this, but just don't fill in the last date, because we don't know when that's going to be. So I feel for the landlord. At the same time, it's going to take everything we've got to get this thing back open. Who's to say that there's not another spike and we get shut down again? We couldn't weather another storm like that. So it would behoove me to stay closed until I'm pretty effing sure that nobody's going to shut us down again because of a spike.
Yeah, what a dilemma the politicians face, trying to get businesses open and the economy going again, and then the threat of either a winter spike or a spike related to opening up. These are all difficult issues that we face, and you're right. What happens if we get another spike like we did in June as a result of opening up? This is why some of the clubs are not even opening, and some of the restaurants are not taking advantage of the executive orders that are coming out now. But this is a worldwide problem, and it's not a problem just related to us. And I don't know. My personal belief, I think Richard said something like third quarter 2021. If we're going to get back to assuming COVID-19 goes away and we don't spike again, I don't see us coming back to any kind of resemblance of normal until at least third quarter.
We're still starting from scratch.
Right. And I know that Martini Bar participates in a lot of events. Ultra Music Festival,
canceled,
Riptide
canceled, Chili Cook-Off canceled.
And how much of that all of that got canceled. Right now, I think
and we have hundreds of employees for those shows.
Right. And right now we're on pins and needles, hoping that the NFL comes to Super Bowl in Tampa in February, and that goes without a hitch. And who knows how that can happen. Well, anyway, I'd like to see if there's any other questions from any of our other participants that we can wrap up with. How do bars and clubs, this is a good question. How can bars and clubs possibly enforce the distance guidelines? How do you do that, Joe?
And why would we? We're not COVID police. We haven't been deputized. If I agree to abide by the guidelines and I've got 700 people in a room that choose not to, I don't know how to handle that. Yet they won't be getting ticketed, I will. But I'm not the COVID police. I'm not deputized. I don't have the right to tell someone, you two get away from each other, move away from your wife, move away from your daughter. I don't have that right.
Interesting perspective. Little bit different, I suppose, than the hotel side, because you don't have that same kind of a scenario.
We have a big open space where people mingle.
Yeah, so Lou, yeah, we do. I'm with Joe. You can, listen, it's no, again, we keep getting angry at people that want us to do things that we don't want to do, but from a social standpoint, what anybody's suggesting is, first of all, we might as well not open a hotel or a restaurant anymore. If you try to do that, you can't do it. I'm not saying that may not be the right thing, and if we're killing each other, then I guess we can't do it anymore, ever. But I don't think this social distancing. Just walk down the street now. I live in Coral Gables. Just walk past Houston's tonight or anywhere. I mean, it's just like there's people, you know, on top of people. Or I was standing in line at the airport to go through security the other day. You know, the guy in front of me. There's too many people. There was no social distancing. You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. You may want to, but you couldn't do it. And we're not all going to walk around with masks for the rest of our lives. I am so sorry. We're not. It's all about when. And Joe is so right. We actually would lose more money if some of the hotels that we open than we do keeping them closed, because we don't have enough customers to support the people that cost. So that it is. But it's not all doom and gloom. Listen, you got to look forward. It is what it is. We keep doing this about how terrible and what we want. It is terrible and it's horrible. We've laid off thousands of people and none of us are making any income. We don't know how we're going to pay our own mortgages next week. I understand that, but we just got to kind of figure it out. But we certainly need a date certain. And that's something that there's got to be a way to come up with that. And there's got to be a way that, you say it's bad for the politicians. I agree, but that's why they're there, and they need to focus. Then read the paper. That nobody seems to be focused on this at all. Everything's getting better. There's a November. We had a great silly debate the other night. Nobody's focused on what Joe and we've been talking about at all. We need to.
It does seem like that's the case, and you know, it does seem like that's the case. I don't know that I could end this webinar with any better words than you just said, Richard. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I'm very concerned about the industry. I'm very concerned about where we're going. Very concerned about the families that are adversely affected and the businesses that we have been servicing for so many decades. This is a mess. And all we can hope is that COVID-19, every day we're a step closer to putting this behind us. It's the only way to look at it. And that's where we need to be. We need to put this behind us and move forward. I thank you very much for everybody who attended. I think we're out of time. I can't thank you, Richard, Hector, and Joe, can't thank you enough for.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks for inviting me. That was fun.
Richard, thank you so much. I think we're out of time. And thank you so much and have a great afternoon.